Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Friday, August 26th, about 11 o'clock a.m. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson bringing you the final forecast for the Indigo Cup to Georgetown. Thanks for everybody that came out last night to Skippers meetings. Nice to see everyone get face-to-face time and actually have some questions, Q&A afterwards. That's always fun. But we talked about this nocturnal jetting phase and how it may not settle in at nighttime, and now we're looking like the sea breeze could be even weaker today because the coastal ridge may not develop as much as maybe the optimistic model guidance was giving us yesterday. There's some reasons for that, but first I want to go to the CORA website just as a reminder to go to the skipper's information, offshore wind and weather to come here to see these forecasts. I'm sure most of you already know that by now. So let's go right ahead into the weather. Here's a visible satellite. We're seeing a lot of moisture streaming overhead. We have high pressure over the Appalachian Mountains. We have a cold front way up here trying to advance to the south. But what this is doing is it's just driving light northerly winds all the way down the coastline. In fact, we're seeing kind of a northeast flow in along the coast or just north to northeast. But you can see these mid-level clouds, these stratus clouds all up top from that cool condensing doming out of the high overhead. And then we have this Gulf moisture still streaming in from west southwest to east northeast. And so it looks like most of that rain has fizzled out. We saw some sprinkles this morning. Still a few sprinkles could happen throughout the day, some isolated little areas. But the good thing is that this front is finally pushing off the coastline. And that means maybe a little bit less unsettled weather for into tonight and tomorrow morning, which is good. I don't see much in the way of storming. What one thing that we need to watch for is high pressure as it comes down. It develops a coastal ridge in along the coastline, and this is what's going to create our sea breeze setup for this afternoon. The only problem is without sunshine, abundance of sunshine, we don't get a good circulation to happen. So if we stay cloudy along the coast, the sea breezes are going to be weaker. Whereas if we get pockets of open sunshine, we're looking at maybe back to the modest values, 8 to 12 knots. But for right now, I'm only seeing southwest winds about 6 to 10, maybe 7 to 11 knots inside the harbor at the start of the race at 4 o'clock and at the start of the race at 7 o'clock. So it's just going to be kind of a light setup, light, maybe modest values on the high end through about 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. And then at nighttime, let's go ahead and take a look at the surface map. And here's Friday afternoon. As we get into tonight, that front nudges just a little further offshore, or I should say farther offshore, and the coastal ridge starts to fade through the night. So that means with this front hanging up on the lee side, I'm sorry, the windward side of the Appalachian Mountains, not quite making it there, we may not get that nocturnal jetting. I mean, if we do, it'd be a pleasant surprise at this point. I'm really going on confidence, low confidence on that to happen now. I mean, earlier in the week I had medium confidence. It looked like it could. A couple of models were pointing at it, but it needs to be right over the mountains or further, a little further upstate for us to see that nocturnal jetting setup. So with that said, we're likely going to see the sea breezes fade out, and then we're going to end up with that high pressure of the Appalachian Mountains pushing that west to northwest flow down the coast. Very light winds, probably 1 to 5 or 2 to 6 knots as we get into the early morning hours. So we go ahead and take a look at Datascope. You can see this sensor and sail flow if you have the Plus or Pro forecast, but I like to use Datascope because it's more has more detail to it. But our Winyah Bay front A rear light is just off the coast of Winyah Bay where you're going to be hooking in to go to Georgetown. They are 4 buoys just inside this channel, but we can see the wind forecast. I'm just going to run all the models for it so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. And if we go out to this afternoon, we see the sea breeze coming up. Now the red model is the HRRR, which is being a little optimistic. The NAM 12 is down from 9 to 13 knots where it was before. It's actually down to about 6 or 7 knots. So there is the Woof Wharf, which is a little lower. So the model guidance is all in agreement on the direction, as you can see down below. But as far as speeds, there's a really wide variety, anything from 4 to 8 knots or 9 knots. And a couple of miles of GFS and the HRRR both a little on the higher end. So that's at least some positive news, but I can't wish cast that for you. I can still say 6 to 10 knots at the start of the race with an optimistic 7 to 11. If we get up into the lower teens, very low teens, that would be the best case scenario to get you out beyond the jetties. So this is Winyah Bay as we go into the nighttime. In fact, I'll just go back down to Charleston real quick to see what the forecast is for the harbor. We're going to pick the Fort Sumter Front Range light for the start, and it's getting kind of close. So you have the National Weather Service, which has it up to about 10 knots. The HRRR up around the same. So again, 6 to 10 to 7 to 11 from the south, or maybe even the south-southeast at the start of the race. For Charleston, as you go up the coastline, we see the winds just a tad higher up near the Grand Strand, maybe even a little bit higher up towards southeastern North Carolina. But you see what happens overnight. We go back to selecting all. Going into the overnight hours, you see the winds. Most of the model agreement is starting to shift the winds a little bit more westerly by about 3 to 4 o'clock a.m. You'll probably see that westerly flow, maybe even northwest flow, um, sort of easing out off the land. And so the further out you are in the ocean, probably the better off. I wouldn't say 20 miles, I mean more like 10, 5 to 10 miles out. You'll probably catch that land breeze. It might be a little stronger as you head towards Winyah Bay, simply because that stretch of inside coastal area opens up a little bit, so you get a little bit more wind coming out of there. But either way, you'd probably be under motor at that point, heading up into Winyah Bay to Georgetown. So that's kind of what the winds I think are going to do overnight. They're going to, like we talked about in the skipper's meeting last night, they're probably going to shift to land breezes from the west or northwest at about 2 to 6 knots. And I think that's pretty firm. So I know it might be some slow sailing out there, but the NAM3 is still sniffing a little bit at some winds. We get into 4 o'clock this afternoon. We go up, we get 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday. You can see that little tiny little pockets of nocturnal jetting just from that real distant front. I don't think it's really going to make a connection. It doesn't even show that much. It was a little bit more optimistic a couple of days ago where it was showing 10 to 12 knots, but now we're down to 5 to 6. So that's about what it's showing. The NAM3 is also steering winds off from the west to northwest by the early morning hours. As we get into Saturday, for those who want to sail back down to Charleston, it looks like we do get a little bit of a northerly bump, but then southeast sea breeze is what is expected for tomorrow afternoon. And we'll just pick Winyah Bay again for this one and take a look at all models for Saturday day. I know some of y'all want to hear what that's looking like. So it looks like the veer will not fully happen until late morning to noon, where you start to see the winds kind of clocking north over to east northeast and then ultimately east southeast by mid to late afternoon. So we're looking at about 7 to 11 knots southeast sea breezes all the way down the coastline for tomorrow. The closer in, the better off you are. The further out, maybe a little bit less wind, simply because it's going to be a coastal ridge versus a giant Bermuda high that's steering that in. So just from FYI on that, okay, for tomorrow's sail back. So southeasterly winds actually a little easier to ride. You can just lay into the rum line and head back, or what used to be the rum line from the race. So the NAM3, we covered that. Tidal fluxing, we're looking at about a 5.5 foot swing. So your tide will be flood as you leave the harbor and out through the jetties, and the max floods can be about 5:12 p.m. It's listed as 1.7 knots. However, through the jetties, we're looking at 2.1 as the adjustment, the mental adjustment we have to make for that water that's funneling through there. Waves, again, about 1.5 feet to 2 feet. And I'm still calling east-southeast. And we're also period is about 7 to 8 seconds. So that's pretty firm. I think we've had that on the map for about 3 or 4 days now, so nothing's changed there. Look at precip real quick. As like I said earlier, it looks like a lot of this rain's gonna be fizzling out later. We see some isolated pockets of showers, maybe a couple storms up near the Grand Strand, and then as we get into tonight, looks like things really fizzle out overnight, simply because that Appalachian high pressure and the radiational cooling and that northwest flow, the west northwest flow, tends to dry up things in the atmosphere. So looking pretty good. Your dew points may be a little high. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw maybe a pocket or two of fog out there if the winds do switch in from the east in the morning time, but that radiational cooling won't be that low. So it's likely not. Maybe better chance Saturday night to see fogging with that southeast flow. Air temperatures are going to be pretty comfortable in the mid 80s, and then as you get into Saturday morning, low 70s for your low temperatures as you're leaving or staying in Georgetown. So best of luck out there to everybody for the race today. That's about all I have, and I wish I had more wind for you, but unfortunately we're still stuck in this unsettled pattern, and we start to see things round off probably Monday, Tuesday, where we get a little bit more of a favorable pattern for southerly winds. So that's kind of what's in the future, but for right now we're stuck with it. So best of luck out there, everybody. Safe travel, safe race, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.